How you do that, girl? How you do that, girl? And I ain't mad about it. I am your man's Nic Rattlehead. And behind this camera, somewhere out in California, hopefully watching over your boy and hopefully staying hydrated, is my buddy, my pal, my compadre, my amigo. My man's with the master plan, 100 grand, only you, me, and God knows how much I love this guy, man. Oh, tell him one more time, what's your name? Matt the Graff. And we are Aftershock Reviews, here to give you the best extreme music reviews. And today I submit before you an album that I'm so pumped to talk about since the day it dug its huge claws into my chest. The name of this album is called Celestial Blues by King Woman. Now, before we get into backstories, before we get into narratives and all the rest of that stuff, let's talk about who King Woman is, right? Who is this band, right? Well, we have Miss Chris Isfandiari on vocals. We have Mr. Peter Arensdorf, heck yes, getting names right, and he is on our bass and our guitars. And then we have Mr. Joseph Rigoza on percussion. And oh man, this band is great. It's absolutely wonderful. I came across this band in 2017 with Created in the Image of Suffering, and I was really entranced by their unique blend of shoegaze, post-metal, and doom metal, right? I was also falling in love with Chris's vocals, because her vocals is really, really something that is different, something that is engaging, something that is haunting, something that is euphoric, and it's threatening, all at the same time. I love unique vocals like this. I love unique vocals where I can just turn around and be like, I know exactly who that is. This is this band, and it's probably from this album because they did this with their vocals that was different than the previous album. It's really great. And Chris's vocals does that, but I'll get into that in a second because I really want to get into this track listing. And I know it's at a blitzkrieg pace, but there's so much good stuff here. It really is. Ooh. So let's get into the title track, which opens the album, Celestial Blues, right? Now, Celestial Blues is a track that opens with this epic poem, and that's foreshadowing, by the way. But it opens with this epic poem, and it talks about when Chris's mother helps her in the shower. Well, why did she have to go help her? Why did she have to go and rescue her daughter, right? Well, to give you backstory, Chris's parents were very religious. They would go around and they would have exorcisms and they would speak in tongues. They would help people, right? They were very strong in their Christian faith, right? And to give you a story on Chris at some point felt like there was a spirit of death that would constantly torment her. Well, one day in the shower, that spirit of death descends upon her and she almost feels like she's flatlined. She almost feels like she's dying. And at some point she gasps and she calls out, she screams. Her mother hears that cry. Her mother hears that scream and she runs in, still in her clothes, still in her shoes, shoots the shower curtain back and jumps in there with her daughter as the shower head is still streaming water down upon the both of them. And she holds her close in her bosom and she starts to speak in tongues, to pray away, to denounce, to send away this spirit of death that is tormenting her daughter. And that is what this epic poem is really trying to get across, right? And once Chris whispers this epic poem across this dreary, this doomy, this somber guitar melody, right? And it's really good. And it's laced in reverb and it's laced in delay. Thank you, Matt. It's laced in delay. We have the core of the track just poured down upon us, right? The riffs get huge. The riffs get smothering. The riffs get suffocated. It's massive and it's doomy and it's sludgy at the same time. And I really enjoy this about it because not only is the subject matter multifaceted, but the way that they approach the instrumentation is just as multifaceted and just as intriguing as well. And it's fantastic. And Chris's vocals are howling and echoing all across the landscape. It's really great. And let's go into her vocals because her vocals, yet again, they can be husky and powerful. They can almost be androgynous at some points, right? But at the same time, they can also switch on the drop of a hat and be vulnerable and being insanely feminine, right? But on top of that, they can be animalistic at times, especially on tracks like Psychic Wound. It's good. It's good stuff. And the lyrical content goes into finding one's identity, right? It goes into torment and pain and suffering, right? It's epic. It's absolutely epic. But as epic as we think that they can be on this title track that opens us, it's only a taste. It's only a snippet of what we're going to get, because then we get the lead single for this album, and also what I think to be the most important track off of this album. We get Morning Star. Now, Morning Star gets its names from Isaiah 14 and 12, which it describes Lucifer as the morning star, right? Because Lucifer was an angel. I think he was either a cherubim or something like that, right? And he was created by God, and he was one of the highest ranked angels you could possibly get, right? And that's where he also gets one of his names, the morning star, right? He was well versed in music. He was almost, and they call it blameless in his ways, right? But then at some point, Lucifer starts thinking very highly of himself. Lucifer is just kind of like, you know what? I'm the shiznit. I'm the bee's knees, man. And not only am I going to be the bee's knees, but I am going to be just as high as he is, right? And then at this point, God's like, no, I ain't having that. You gotta go, right? You gotta go. You gotta get out of here, right? And that is the fall from heaven, right? Because at some point, there's two falls in this album. There's a fall from heaven. There's the fall of Adam and Eve. But why am I telling you all of this? Why is all of this important? Because the album loosely follows the epic poem, like the previous track, Paradise Lost by John Milton. That poem, that book, so to speak, was given to Chris while she was writing this album. And it serves as almost a linchpin of what's happening within this album, because it's important, because Satan is now, or Lucifer is now, I'll call him that for the sake of this album, Lucifer is giving his account of what happened, right? And then on top of that, it's also starting to reveal to you a motive of the events that's going to transpire here, right? Because Lucifer was just like, yo, man, I was minding my own, I was doing my thing, I believed in myself, and I got tossed down and sent to hell for this, right? And to me, it's a situation where it's kind of like, okay, cool, now I know what I'm about to do. Now I know what's going to have to happen in order for me to get my vengeance upon you. Also, that can go into, I think it's Ruse, and it's going to be the second from the last track on this album. It's actually really great because it's talking about vengeance on a lover who cheated on her, right? It's really great. And since speaking of lovers and things of that nature, it also seems to be walking hand in hand. Lucifer's story is walking hand in hand with Chris's story, because it talks a lot about relationships here in this album. And I'm thinking at some point, and this is just Nic's taking a wild stab in the dark here, because it's Chris Esfandiari in multiple interviews did not really give you much information about, her personal stuff that went into this album, right? Like, was it about a relationship? Was it about, anything in particular? She really doesn't go too deep into it, because she did say she went through something, but she doesn't go into detail. So I just have to make my interpretation at this point. And I think that it's also about a relationship. So Lucifer and Chris's stories are walking hand in hand here. And Morning Star helps set that up. It's absolutely great. And sonically, it's absolutely great, because it starts out yet again with our reverb delayed guitar. And Lucifer is giving his account on top of that, or Chris is giving her account on top of that. And the track swells, and it gets bigger, and it gets larger until it hits the climax as she screams in repetition, Lucifer falling from the heights, falling from the heavens, how high you were, and then now how low you are, right? And almost same thing probably with Chris and her relationship, how high she was and how great it probably must have been, until at some point she started to realize who this person was and how they treated her and how badly they treated her and how low that made her. It's really cool. It's really cool when you really start to try and unpack it from that angle. And then after Morning Star, we get Boz, right? And I'm hoping I'm saying that correctly. And there's multiple different translations to this word, but she kind of relates it to the feeling you get right before you cry, right? And the thing about it as well, this track feels very, very 90s, very 90s sludge, very 90s alternative metal. It's really good. It's really great. And she starts introducing things that I've never heard her do, so far as like heavy breathing and the way that she delivers these vocals. And then on top of it comes with one of the coolest lines, one of the coolest things she does in this entire album. And she starts breathing this cool rhythmic line. She goes like, yet again, I have to sing. This is how I do things. She goes like, oh, this isn't love. Don't you call it love when you're using me like a drug? Drugs, you know what they tend to do to me. If you don't want me, set me free. And it just drops like a son of a gun. And she starts barking her lines. absolutely great. The dynamic of the delivery is great, right? And she's telling you, hey man, this is what you did to me. This is why I'm starting to become who I am. Look at all of this crap you put me through, dude. It's absolutely fantastic. And it's almost like she's like pouring herself in front of her lover or ex-lover, right? Like, this is the stuff that you do to me. This is the crap that you put me through, man. It's great. You gotta look at it from different angles, right? You gotta turn it around on its head sometimes. It's really good. And these different elements of that 90s alternative metal, right? It still has the shoegazy elements because our constant companion through this album sonically outside of Chris's delivery is, oh my gosh, that dreary, it's a dreamy guitar. And it's really great because that dreamy guitar is setting up the stage a lot of times. But then on top of that, it's introducing very catchy melody riffs. It's good. It's absolutely fantastic. But after Balls, we get Golgotha. And Golgotha is where you're going to start to see things change lyrically, and you're going to see things change in a narrative fashion. And on top of that, you're going to see things change and be a little bit different so far as whether they execute things sonically. Because yet again, okay, here is our dreary, dreamy guitar, right? But it gets big off rip. It gets huge, right? And the thing about it is, on top of that, there's also repetition in the lyrical content, right? And she's repeating these things for a reason, especially when you talk about lines like, and I have to make sure I read this correctly, the snake that eats its tail, right? I think the character is caught in some type of repetitious behavior that is destructive to itself. It's starting to understand, like, I keep doing the same thing, hoping that I get something different. I keep doing the same thing, hopefully that I can get the desired outcome I want. But anybody who understands what the definition of insanity is, you're doing the same thing, hoping for a different outcome. And it doesn't work that way. And I think at some point within this track, our character or Chris or Lucifer finds out I can't keep going about this the same route, hoping that I get what I want. Like, Lucifer can't keep going at God like in Paradise Lost. He can't keep going at God head first and thinking he's going to beat him, because God at this point in the epic poem is too strong for that. He's too strong for that. You can't keep going at him like that. So then at some point, Lucifer gets the idea. It rings a bell. Cool. Tell you what. So you are too strong for that, but you have this creation over here that you really seem to like. I'm gonna hit that. And the same thing is kind of happening here, where it's kind of like, I can't keep expecting him to love me while I keep doing the same thing, because this person is too destructive. This person really doesn't care about me. So they die to that behavior. They leave it alone. They said, you know what? Screw it. I will leave this here. I'm going to leave this where it needs to be, and it's going to die, right? But anything that what we're starting to learn here is that when things die, they come back, but they come back stronger. Or when things are left alone, the person who leaves it comes back, and it comes back stronger. Why do I say that? Because Coil is next. So as the person dies in Golgotha, right, which is also supposed to be like, I think it was supposed to be the name of the album, but at some point she settled on Celestial Blues. Either which title would have been dope. I would have been completely fine with either which one of them. But Coil picks up where Golgotha leaves off, because now she resurrects, and she's strong, and she's mad, and she's talking about payback, and it's going to be a son of a gun. And it's, especially to the point where, and I'm going to read the lyrical line here. She says, "You want me gone? Well, best of luck. I've already passed. I've been raised up." And she screams payback. The guitars are huge. The percussion is frantic with this really cool solo line that intros into the track. It's really good. It's really good. It's very manic, and it's very brawny. It's good. Coil is one of the best things about this album as well. And you're going to probably hear me say that a lot, because a lot of things on this album is the best thing about this album, because the album is so good, right? And then on top of that, we have Entwined. Entwined follows this melee that is Coil. And it actually is a little bit sad, and it's a little bit somber, because it's almost like, yes, this person is raised up, but they kind of look back at their past and be like, I'm going to have to let this go. I'm going to have to let this go. They're talking about somebody that they really loved and really had love for and almost longed and pined for. But some point midway through this track, right? Midway through, she starts to let it go, right? And I'm yet again, a lot of reading of lyrics here. And not too mad at that because I just want to make sure that you guys have context. So reading the lyrics, she says, I've been effing around my whole life. No more. I've been wandering so aimlessly. No more. I've been living like deaf and dumb. No more. Oh, don't you think it's about time? It's really good. You're seeing growth here. You're seeing a change in somebody's mental psyche. And it's almost like at the same time when Lucifer goes back to the garden or to paradise, the first time he looks around and he's kind of like, this is beautiful. And it almost kind of like, it feels like Lucifer is kind of like, I could have been a part of this. I could have been a part of this. And it kind of feels bad that he's not. But it doesn't stunt his resolve to do what he needs to do. It doesn't stop his resolve to be like, this is the goal that I have to do. I'm going to corrupt this because of what you did to me. My pride won't let me be a part of this no more. My pride won't let me do this no more. I have to stay true to myself, and I'm coming after you. And it's the same thing here. It's just kind of like, no, I'm still gonna bite your head off. I'm still coming after you, but that was nice. That was nice. Entwined is really great. And then at some point we see this person literally offer themselves fully to their goal or offer themselves fully to whoever it is that they have now kind of come into contact with, right? And that's Psychic Wound. Psychic Wound by far has the gnarliest riff on this whole album. The gnarliest riff on this whole album. It's big, it's nasty, but at the same time, while it's big and it's nasty, it's highly sexy. It's highly slinky. It's really great. It's like black leather in an auditory sense. It's really good. It's really good. And it owns that danger. It owns that sexuality, right? It's really great, especially when talking about lines like, and yet again, a lot of lyric reading. Not mad at it though. Of course, I can't deny when I'm spread on the bed, you remain the luscious fruit. It's great. And to me, it almost feels like, Deftones is, You've Seen the Butcher, right? It's like that, but way more perverted. Because especially when you look at the video of Deftones is You've Seen the Butcher, like the people are dancing in the library, right? The Deftones are kind of performing, but at some point it starts raining blood and people are gyrating and touching all over each other. It's really unnerving and really disturbing at the same time, very sexy. It's like a blood orgy. It's like a satanic blood orgy. And Psychic Wound takes that to a whole nother level. Because at some point in the video, and I have to talk about the video here because it plays into the narrative of the album, like she's like on some type of weird stone altar by herself. But as the video progresses, more people or more demonic entities, more vampires, whatever they are, start to surround her. Blood starts to cake upon their skin as they writhe together, as she's almost submitting herself to the perverse nature of what she's become, right? And the great thing is, like, she might have the little contacts on her eyes to represent like she's becoming something else. Right? Her teeth might sharpen to represent she's becoming something else, but she's still beautiful at someone. She's still really pretty in the video. But that prettiness, that beauty is marred by the blood. It's really cool. It's really cool. And it's almost plays into almost the narrative of the album itself. Like it's perverted beauty, right? It's really, even to the point of the album cover itself, right? You know, I have the CD here. The wings have been ripped from her back, still glowing. There's still some sense of beauty there, but she's been mutilated. The wings are gone, but there's a sense of peace about it too, because like she's holding the cigarette, she's kind of relaxed, right? The same thing is happening here as she calms down and she just embraces, she accepts everything that she's become, right? And she's finding strength in it and she's getting off on it. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And then at some point we get Ruse. We've tackled that before. It's about her finding out that her partner is cheating and getting vengeance upon them. But while Ruse is good, the album closer it's fantastic. It's fantastic because of all of this boisterous nature that's been going on here. Paradise Lost silent. And Paradise Lost, which is the album closer, is referencing Paradise Lost, the epic poem, which kind of holds this whole thing together, right? Because at this point, the fall of man now happens. We already talked about the fall of Lucifer. We've already talked about the fall of maybe even Chris herself in this album. Now we're talking about the fall of man, because at this point, Eve has been deceived by the serpent, or deceived by Lucifer himself, right? And at this point, she takes the apple and she eats. She goes back to Adam. Adam, like in the poem, Adam is just kind of like, well, I love her. And he lusts for her heavily, right? He wants to have her. He doesn't want to actually go and be without her, right? Even though he knows she's done what she doesn't need to do, right? So at this point, he's just like, crap. Well, I still want you. So I'm going to eat this apple, right? And he takes and he eats. Satan's plan, Lucifer's plan, has now been fulfilled. It's now been accomplished. He has corrupted God's almost blameless, almost perfect plan, right? It's almost like a triumph at this point, right? And it's Satan also now being like, this is what I am. This is what it is, right? And I like that dynamic that she plays between all three of these characters four, because there's Adam and Eve. So it's like her, Lucifer, Adam and Eve, right? And it's really great because it also seems very introspective, because there is no blaring guitars. None at all. The percussion is very sparse, very like just keeping time, no fills, no nothing. And it only comes on in probably like midway through the track as well. So it's quiet. It leaves you with yourself. It's really good, and it's a really interesting way to end the album. On top of that, also I've read that there is also hints of Lilith in this track. I don't know where she comes in. That's very interesting. I would really like to have some type of and if you know how Lilith plays into this track itself, just leave that comment in the comment section below, because I would really like to hear your interpretation of that. Maybe it's a situation where, especially when she's talking about it's the saddest story and stuff like that, and betrayal and stuff like that. Like maybe Lilith, because Lilith is also supposed to be the first wife of Adam, but she didn't want to submit herself to that. She wanted to be her own person, and she was kicked out of the garden because of that. And then at some point, she also at that point becomes a demon. She's actually one of the first female demons as well, right? And maybe also when you look at Lilith and you're talking about, because I thought for myself, you kicked me out of here, that's not my fault, cool, now I'm gonna come after you. It's still playing in that narrative, right? Maybe that's how that happens. Maybe that's where she plays her role in this track in particular, maybe even in this album. But this album is great. This album is great. And the fact that it makes you think like this, the fact that it makes you look at it in so many different angles and so many different perspectives, is really interesting. And it's really one of the most engaging listens I got so far in this year. It's fantastic. A+ stuff. A+ stuff, man. The name of this album again is called Celestial Blues by King Woman. You can get it now. I'll leave links in the description below. I think you can go to their Bandcamps to still get it. I got my CD here. My record actually supposed to be coming today. I'm actually really excited. Buy a t-shirt, buy a CD, buy a vinyl, support your bands, man. Make sure that they can still go out and do what they want to do, right? And when it benefits them, it's benefiting you too, because you get a chance to get pieces like this that you can go back and just dissect, and that can relate to you, and that you can just sit with, right? It's really good. This real good, man. This real good. I am your man's Nic Rattlehead, and behind this camera somewhere out in California watching over your boy is my buddy, my pal, my compadre, my amigo. Tell him one more time what's your name. Nic the Graff. Love you, buddy. Wash your hands, support your bands. Peace. How you do that, damn? Yeah.